broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on safeguarding for musicians delivered by the ISM Trust. I'm John Robinson, Head of Compliance here at the ISM, and I'm also the ISM's designated safeguarding person. Before we begin, just a few technical points. You can't see me, but you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation. You should also be able to hear me, but I can't hear you. If you have any questions, please type them in the questions box on your screen. I won't be trying to answer them live, as they're sure to require careful consideration, but I will endeavour to answer as many as I can by email over the next 2 weeks. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on the ISM's website at ism.org/webinars. For those of you who maybe don't know us, the Incorporated Society of Musicians, or the ISM as everyone calls us, was established in 1882 to promote the art of music and to support professional musicians. Now, many years later, we support a membership of nearly 10,000 music professionals of all kinds, teachers, performers, composers, and many more besides, with legal advice and representation, tax and business advice, and award-winning professional development opportunities, along with campaigning and advocacy for the music sector as a whole. Some of you may have read our recent reports, including the consultation on the future of music education and the all-party parliamentary group for music education's State of the Nation report. Through our sister charity, the ISM Trust, which was launched in 2014, we have established a means to share our experience and expertise with musicians beyond just those who are ISM members. This webinar is part of the Trust's professional development opportunities, which are open to all musicians, regardless of whether they are ISM members or not. Welcome to all of you. In this session, I'm going to be talking about safeguarding for musicians working with children, and we will follow up with safeguarding for musicians working with vulnerable adults in the near future. This session should take about half an hour, and I hope you will find this information useful. Today, we're going to look at 5 broad areas, as noted on this slide. First of all, a general overview of safeguarding and child protection, and some definitions of words which are used in discussion on these subjects. Then we're going to look at some practical matters and suggestions for good practice. It's important to know what to do when any safeguarding issues arise, so we will then be looking at some practical measures to help you if a child discloses anything to you that you need to act on, and also who you should report to. Sometimes allegations are made against you as a music professional, and we cover this point too. ISM members are bound, as a condition of their membership, to observe certain policies and procedures for safeguarding, and I will explain how these work. And finally, just a couple of signposts on where to get further advice. I think you should remember these key points from this webinar, as follows really. Child protection and safeguarding is based upon a large amount of legislation, but also on a lot of practical experience and a philosophy which recognises that the safety of children in our society is of paramount importance. Key statutory guidance from the government, such as working together to safeguard children, emphasises that effective safeguarding is achieved by putting children at the centre of the safeguarding system and by every individual and agency playing their full part. This child-centred approach is fundamental to safeguarding and promoting the welfare of every child. This flows through into our sectors too. The government guidance document, Keeping Children Safe in Education, regularly revised and last revised in September 2019, in fact, applies to all schools, whether state schools or otherwise, and links right back to working together to safeguard children. It emphasises again that all those who have contact with children need to play their part effectively. A child-centred approach means that all should consider at all times what is in the best interests of the child. Working together also states that children have said, among other things, that what they need are the following. They need vigilance, for adults to notice when things are troubling them. They need understanding and action to understand what's happening, to be heard and understood, and to have that understanding acted upon. They need support and advocacy, and they need protection. All this translates into a number of clear obligations on individuals working with children. The themes of being observant, listening, supporting and taking action are all expressed in things like safeguarding and child protection policies and procedures, such as ours, or those found in schools or local authorities and in other environments. So in practical terms, if you're working in an organisational context with children, you need to find out who to go to in the event of any safeguarding matters arising. A good organisation will tell you who this person is, how to contact them, and will signpost you to the relevant procedures to follow. Make sure you familiarise yourself with these. If you're working outside of an organisational context, you should make yourself aware of what you can do if you have concerns. If you're an ISM member working outside of an organisation, we have procedures in place to tell you who to contact at the ISM. If you are a member of another similar body, you may have other guidance available to you from them too. ISM members need to familiarise themselves with our various policies and procedures, and indeed it's a condition of your membership. We'll go through these in more detail later in this presentation. Sometimes people are unclear about the distinction between safeguarding and child protection, so at its essence it comes down to this. Safeguarding is an ongoing obligation, a practice which stems from the child-centred, proactively committed approach I described previously. It's about creating a framework within which risk is minimised by building support agencies with legal obligations, articulating the obligations on everyone to keep children safe, and creating an environment in which children feel they will be safe and supported if they speak up. This means that you have to be prepared to speak up if you think something is wrong. Child protection, on the other hand, is about responding to specific incidents of harm when they arise. Just a little bit of background to the law relating to safeguarding and child protection. What do we mean by child? This means anyone under 18. This is really important. While 16 and 17-year-olds can be very grown up and can legally do lots of things we would classify as adults, in law they are still considered as children until their 18th birthday. This should be remembered particularly by those working with young people of this age. Maintaining appropriate social boundaries is really important. All sorts of misunderstandings can and do arise from social relationships with young people in this age group. You should avoid any conduct which would lead any reasonable person to question your motivation and intentions. Legal responsibilities, as I mentioned, there is a huge volume of legislation in the safeguarding and child protection area. I'm not proposing to go through all that today, as we simply wouldn't have the time. But I would ask you to note the following. Section 1 of a key bit of legislation, the Children Act 1989, states that when the courts are considering any decision relating to the upbringing of a child, the safety of the child's welfare is paramount, and also that time is of the essence. Delay in dealing with issues is likely to be prejudicial to a child's welfare. Section 47 is the important section of this Act which places a duty on local authorities to investigate in certain circumstances when they have received reports that a child is at risk of harm. This has given rise to the general principle that for the rest of us, the welfare of the child is paramount, and good safeguarding practice and procedures in which time is of the essence are essential requirements in our response to that general duty. The government has produced some useful and very readable guidance on safeguarding. For educators, keeping children safe in education is very useful. For school governors and heads, but also for staff. Indeed, the notes to Keeping Safe in Education 2019 say that the first part of the document should be read by all staff engaged by schools and colleges. Keeping Children Safe also says the following: all staff of schools and colleges should be aware of the process for making referrals to children's social care and for statutory assessments under the Children Act 1989, especially Section 17, Children in Need, and Section 47, which I've mentioned, a child suffering or likely to suffer significant harm that may follow a referral, along with the role they may be expected to play in such assessments. Working together to safeguard children is further statutory guidance from the government and is again underpinned by the principle that everyone who comes into contact with children has a role to play in effective safeguarding, that nothing is more important than children's welfare. Children in need who need help and protection deserve high quality and effective support as soon as a need is identified. These are very useful documents to refer to, and you can find these easily on the government's website at gov.uk just by searching for the title of these publications. Next, we're going to look at some definitions of abuse used in safeguarding discourse. Here we are on the slide with some key components to look at. Knowing what to look for is vital to the early identification of abuse and neglect. You should be aware of indicators of abuse or neglect so that you can identify cases where children who may be in need of help or protection. We set out some of the important definitions here. It's worth remembering that children can be abused in a family or in an institutional or community setting by those known to them, or more rarely by others. Abuse can take place wholly online, or technology may be used to facilitate offline abuse. And children may be abused by an adult or adults, or by another child or children. The main types of abuse include the four listed on the slide. Emotional abuse, this means a wide range of instances which can be summarised as the persistent emotional maltreatment of a child, such as to cause severe and adverse effects in a child's emotional development. Physical abuse, this can involve hitting, shaking and other behaviours which cause physical harm to a child. Neglect is defined, among other things, as the persistent failure to meet a child's basic physical or psychological needs, such that it results in the serious impairment of a child's health or development. Sexual abuse is defined as forcing or enticing a child or young person to take part in sexual activities, whether or not the child is aware of what's happening. So you should look out for evidence of these sorts of things, and if you're concerned, tell someone straight away. Also think about a child's behaviour. Has it suddenly changed? Do they suddenly seem withdrawn or unusually distant? Are they showing any other unusual types of behaviours? These could be indicators that something is amiss. Listen actively, watch actively, and if you're concerned, draw it to the attention of those responsible in your organisation. I hope this has been some useful background to safeguarding and child protection. We're now going to look at some of the things you can do in practice to promote good safeguarding. They're also intended to help you in your professional practice. Over the years, we've built up some guidance on best practice to help protect musicians when working with children. So, physical contact. Physical contact between musicians and music teachers and their charges is only appropriate in very limited circumstances. Teachers should consider using other strategies, such as demonstrating for the student to copy or using a mirror. If a teacher intends to use any physical contact in their teaching, they should state this in writing before lessons begin and ask the parent or the guardian of a pupil to sign that they have read the document. We also think that you should explain the type of touch involved, where on the body and why, and make sure the pupil is aware of the reason for physical contact. Explain this to parents, guardians and pupils, and keep them informed of any need to modify the type of touch required as pupils progress. It's not advisable to touch a child on the trunk of the body unless there is a justifiable reason, such as to administer first aid. It is not appropriate to touch a child around the chest, waist, diaphragm or ribs in order to teach breathing. Private teachers need to be aware of the risks associated with teaching children alone, particularly when teaching takes place at the home of the teacher or the pupil. In institutional settings, it's good practice to make it possible for another person to view the lesson from outside the room, for example by using a room with a window in the door or teaching with the door open. When teaching at home, we encourage teachers to ask parents or guardians either to sit in on lessons or to wait in an adjacent room with the door open while the lesson is taking place. Teachers should always provide information on who else might be in the house or premises where lessons are taking place. Social media is an area in our very connected age where even young children can have a social media presence and may well want to invite you to be their online friend. We would advise against this. Never communicate with children via Twitter, Facebook, or any other social media. It is a huge area of risk, where the scope for misunderstandings is massive and also is documented. There will be a record of your online conversations. Other than in exceptional circumstances, we also advise that you do not communicate directly with children by email or text messages, and only then with the prior consent of the child's parent or guardian. If electronic communication is necessary, in our view, best practice would be to communicate directly with parents or guardians. You don't need to contact young people and children for this purpose. If you use the internet in teaching, think carefully about how this would work. Does parental supervision become necessary? How are you going to do it? What other sites may appear as part of the teaching? Look very closely at what you're planning to do and think through all the aspects of this. Grooming is really important, and to protect yourselves you need to know what grooming looks like and what people consider to be grooming behaviour. The NSPCC, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, describes grooming as follows. Grooming is when somebody builds a relationship, trust or emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit and abuse them. Children and young people who are groomed can be sexually abused, exploited or trafficked. Anyone can be a groomer, no matter their age, gender or race. Grooming can take place over a short or long period of time, from weeks to years. Groomers may also build a relationship with the young person's family or friends to make them seem trustworthy or authoritative. The NSPCC also notes that groomers are often people who are some kind of authority figure in a child's eyes, such as a teacher or a musical director, other examples of that kind. In the light of this, it's really important that anyone working with children in a position of authority, whether as a music teacher or in other musical capacities, recognises that their professional relationships with children must always observe proper professional boundaries. This is for your own safety as well as for promoting the well-being of the child. What should you do if you are in the presence of a child who wants to make an allegation of abuse or a disclosure of some kind? The bullets on the slide is the standard guidance from the NSPCC and others working in this sector. It's also the wording of the ISM's policy and procedures, which we'll come on to. It's a really clear example of the child-centred approach I spoke about earlier, and also solid guidance which you should follow if a child discloses anything to you. The key message for the child in all of this is as follows. It's not your fault. You're not to blame. You have a right to be safe. You don't have to keep a secret about being hurt or feeling afraid. You don't have to deal with this on your own. You can tell someone that you can trust about what's happening. People want to be able to help you. The key message for you is give the child space to tell you what they need to. Don't promise to keep it a secret. Let them know that you will have to share it. Make a note of this conversation in writing and then tell somebody responsible for safeguarding your place of work, whether or not you're an employee, that you've received this disclosure. Again, time is of the essence. Do this as soon as you can if you have any concerns. How do you report your concerns? It's vitally important to do this as quickly as possible. If you're in a place of work, find out what the procedure is and follow it. If you're working independently, you may need to contact a professional body such as the ISM for advice. If you're not a member of a professional body, contact the NSPCC helpline, they can advise. You may need to contact emergency services if the situation requires. And the important thing is that time is of the essence, so act fast. Get any concerns into the hands of the professionals as quickly as you can. The important thing is tell someone, don't conceal it, don't do nothing. Your obligation is the safety of the child, you have to act. That's the collective obligation on all of us. What happens if an allegation is made against you? You should make sure, first of all, that your employer or anybody that you're working for as a contractor knows that this allegation has been made. Employers have a duty of care to employees, so they should have proper procedures in place to support you. Try and find out what these are and to make sure that you get the direction that you need. You should also try and get professional advice, if this happens, from an organisation such as the ISM, or legal advice if necessary. If you are an ISM member, you should contact our legal team immediately. Our team will try and help you with your employment or contractual situation. But under the ISM's own internal safeguarding procedures, you will also have to notify the ISM's designated safeguarding person. I'll talk about that in more detail in the next slide. Many ISM members will have frequent contact with children in the course of their professional activities, and the ISM acknowledges that it has a responsibility to promote best practice and the highest standards of conduct among its members and indeed the staff in relation to the safety of children. We also recognise that good safeguarding and child protection policies and procedures are a benefit to ISM members, as it can help protect you from misunderstandings or erroneous allegations. We develop these policies and procedures to help guide you in best practice and also to set up the expectations we have of you as professionals and members of a professional association. The Code of Conduct covers a wide range of topics and includes a special section for private music teaching, which also addresses safeguarding matters. I quoted from this during the course of this session. It's the practical guidance about what kind of room you're in, keeping doors open, and so on. Our Safeguarding and Child Protection Policy Code of Practice and Procedures sets out our general policy approach towards child protection and safeguarding, and specifically focused on children. It also includes information on how to report any safeguarding concerns. The policy and guidance must be observed by all ISM members. The disciplinary procedure covers professional conduct and safeguarding issues, and the ISM has the right in certain circumstances to suspend or terminate a membership. You can find all these documents on our website at the link above. You can download them as PDF documents. You don't have to be a member to download them if you want to see what they look like. If you are an ISM member, what do we do if we receive a complaint against you? Under our procedures, we require you to tell us if there's been any allegation or complaint or investigation arising from safeguarding or child protection issues. Once you've notified us, our legal team will try and help you and support you with any legal issues related to an employer or a contract. At the same time, they will need to notify the ISM's designated safeguarding person about the issue. I am currently the ISM's designated safeguarding person. Under our procedures, I will then notify the Chief Executive, and if necessary, the Chief Executive will refer the matter to our Child Protection Committee to decide what needs to happen next. In some cases, this may lead to suspension of benefits or potentially a disciplinary hearing if the matter is serious enough. Obviously, all this information is kept strictly confidential. It may be that benefits may be suspended for a while, pending an investigation. They can be restored if the investigation results in a dropping of any allegations or any claims against you. What do we do if a complaint is received elsewhere from about an ISM member? Again, the designated safeguarding person is informed, and we will follow the same procedures. I will refer the complaint to the Chief Executive for further consideration, and if deemed appropriate, refer it to the Child Protection Committee. If the matter requires legal support, because, for example, an employer contacts us about a member, our legal team will support the member during this part of the process as before. For further information, we would recommend contacting the NSPCC in most circumstances. In particular, they have a helpline with trained counsellors and experts, and you can also email them. Their website is continually updated and is an excellent resource for anyone needing to find relevant and up-to-date information on child protection and safeguarding. The ISM has guidance on safeguarding as well on its website at the link shown above. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please do feel free to write them in the box. We will collect them and I will review them afterwards and come back to you as soon as I can. If you have any questions after we've closed the session down, then you can email me at the following email address, dsp@ism.org. Again, I will come back to you just as soon as I can. Thank you very much. I hope you found this interesting and useful. We will be coming back with a session on vulnerable adults at some point in the near future. In the meantime, many thanks once again. I look forward to receiving your questions. And for now, I'd like to wish you a very good afternoon. Oh, there it is, okay.